Hey guys, this is Carrie, and in this video, we're going to be adding the functionality to our rock, paper, scissors app. Alright, so I didn't go over how to make the HTML or the CSS for this project, but hopefully you figured those things out. So let's go into the JavaScript part of our code. And maybe before we go into the JavaScript code, a good check will be just make sure that the JavaScript HTML line here that links in the script.js file, which is this file here, is at the very bottom of your HTML code. All right, so now that that's at the bottom of our HTML code, let's program the file so that it runs correctly. So we're going to select everything on the page that we're going to interact with, but we're going to do it in a little bit new of a way. So let's see, select all of the elements we are going to interact with. I'm going to start by selecting all of the buttons as a group this time. So this is a new function that we're going to really talk about next unit, but I wanted to make sure that we got to talk about compound conditional statements with the double ends or the ors. And in order to do that, we want to select the buttons as a group. So what we're going to do is we're going to say let buttons equal, and we're going to say document.querySelector. But instead of doing the one that we normally do, document.querySelector, we're going to do document.querySelector all. And this is going to select them as a group. So we're going to select all of the things of type button. You'll notice that there's no hashtag because we're not selecting these buttons using their IDs. We're selecting these buttons using their element type. So let's just make sure that that's working, and let's do a console.log of this group buttons. Oh, it automatically saves. I'm going to make the screen a little bit larger. I'm going to open up the JavaScript console, which on the Chromebooks is Control-Shift-J. I'm going to refresh this, and you'll see that what comes up in the console.log is something called a node list. Now, we haven't talked about lists at all, but the console.log does an amazing job of displaying this list. We've got three things in the list: button.rock, or button ID rock, button ID paper, and button ID scissors. If yours don't have the IDs here, what you can do is you can go to your HTML and you can make sure that your buttons have the IDs rock, paper, and scissors. All right, so now we've got, this is great. We've got all of our buttons selected as a group. And working with these groups will make it so that we don't have to recode the same code over and over again for each button. Okay, let's think about what other elements on the page we're going to interact with. I'd like to interact with the two images. So maybe within this selecting all the things that we're going to interact with, we're going to select the buttons, we're going to select the two images. So let's see, did I give those IDs, those images? I did, awesome. So one is player move image, and the other is going to be computer move image. Let player move image equal, and now we're going to just be selecting the single image. So we're going to use the regular one that we normally use, document.querySelector, hashtag player move image. I'm going to copy and paste this here. Now, there's a trick that I like to use a lot when I'm helping you debug, and it's called the multi-selector. So I'm going to highlight the word player here. And because I want to change this word player in both cases to computer, so that makes computer move image, if you highlight one of them, on a MacBook you can press Command D, or on a Chromebook you can press Control D. And now you actually see that you have both of these selected, these two players. So I'm going to delete those, and I'm going to type in computer, and you'll notice that it types in computer in both places. So now we've got the player move image being selected, and the computer move image being selected. Cool. All right, we're also going to want to update the results and the scores. Let's see. All right, cool. I have an ID on those things, so result and score. So I'm going to put this, and then I'm going to use that multi-selector thing. I'll highlight the whole thing here, and then I'll select it again with Command D. So I'm going to results, I think was the name, and then here highlight this whole one with Command D, and then Command D again to get this one. And that will give us, let's see, score, I think. Let's make sure that those are correct. Result and score, awesome. So I think I've got everything selected that we're going to be interacting with. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to say, and I just want to highlight here, please make sure that for buttons you have document.querySelector all, and the rest of them are just regular query selector. So since this buttons is a group of buttons, it's this group right here, rock, paper, and scissors, I would like to add the same event listener to each of these buttons. And that's actually super easy to do, and that will allow us to avoid copying and pasting and adding it for this one, and adding it for this one, and adding it for this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to say take all of the buttons, and this is really a preview of next unit, and for each of those, and when you do for each, what it will do is it will go through each group of each one of these, and it will give a temporary name to each of them. So at first, this is going to be button. The next time it's going through for each of these, it's going to do it for this, and then for this. And each time through, it will call the one that it's currently on, whatever word we put here, which I think is a good choice for button. Then we're going to make a little arrow by putting equals and then greater than, and we're going to set up a code block. So what we're saying is for each of these buttons, do this group of code. And the thing that we want to do is we want to take the button that we're currently on, each of these, and we want to add an event listener. And this way, we'll only have to type this event listener once because it's automatically going to go through and for each of these buttons, add it. All right, now the event listener that we want to add is a click event. And when it gets clicked, we want to run a function, just like normal. And that function is going to be a code block here. So this code block is, for each of the buttons, add an event listener. And then this code block here is going to be what happens when they get clicked. So the first thing that I want to do when they get clicked is let's do a console.log of the button that gets clicked ID property. And this should log their ID. Let's see what happens. So when we click rock, the ID rock gets logged. Paper, paper. Scissors, scissors. And you'll notice that the ID that's getting logged in the console here is going to be the player's move. So what we could do is instead of logging that, we could say let player move equal button.id. So whichever button they click, we'll get the ID from it, and then that will be the player's move. Now we can set the image here. So if, sorry, I guess I should use the toolbox, but I don't have it open, so I'm just gonna keep going with this. If the player move is equal to, and you'll see that the options are all lowercase here, so we want to be consistent with our casing. If the player move is equal to rock, then what we want to do is we want to set this picture to a rock picture. So we're going to need to find a rock picture. So I'm just going to look up rock and then images. And you'll notice that these images of rocks that come up, these are pretty funny actually. Oh my god, I wasn't expecting that. These images of rocks that come up are all various sizes and shapes. I'd like to keep with the square theme. So if you go to Settings, Advanced Search, any aspect ratio, you can click square, and then you do the advanced search, and it will make it come up. So you have a variety of choices for which rock you're going to use. I will choose this one. I will choose the rock. So to get the source for this image, on the Chromebook you have to press Alt. On a MacBook you press Control. and I'm going to copy the image address. So if the player move is rock, then what we'll do is we'll say player move image, set the source of that equal to this. Then we need a couple of other statements. So else if player move is equal to scissors, or no, paper would be next, right? Rock, paper, scissors. If the player move is equal to paper, let's do a search in the same window, and hopefully it will save that I would like to keep it as a square. So paper. Nope, it didn't save that I wanted to keep it as a square. So some of these are non-squares, so we'll do the same thing, advanced search after clicking the cog. And then for any aspect ratio, square. All right, rock, paper, scissors. Let's use the toilet paper one, that's funny. So we'll click this image and we'll do copy image address. And we'll do player move image. And we'll make the source of that equal to the toilet paper. And then we're going to do the same thing with scissors. So scissors, and just showing from the beginning, images, advanced search by going into the cog here, and then advanced search. Instead of any aspect ratio, we want to do square, advanced search. All right, and we've got some safety scissors, so we'll go with those. So if the player move is anything else, which of course the only other option is scissors, we'll take this guy and we'll copy the image address and we'll make the player move image dot source equal to this one. And I'm going to delete this part that comes after the JPEG and see if that works. Because usually if it ends with the JPEG, that's the image part of it. All right, so let's refresh it here. So when we click rock, it becomes the rock. Paper becomes paper. Scissors becomes scissors. Oh, I love the way this looks. I'm super happy. All right, so the next thing is going to be to determine the computer move. And I guess at this point, we have a lot of strategies by which the computer can make their move. The computer could always pick rock, or the computer could always pick scissors, but that would be kind of boring. So let's have the computer create it randomly. So I am going to go to the toolbox now, and I am going to open up the toolbox to have bookmarked on my computer. And we've worked with this idea of randomly generating things on the computer. And it should remind you a little bit of the Magic 8 Ball, actually. We want to randomly generate something to be displayed. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to go into the toolbox. I saw a lot of people rewriting this. Please don't rewrite it. It's designed to be copied and paste to make things easier for you. So copy and paste the random number function. And we'll add that to the very top of our page. So now we know what it means to generate a random number. What we're going to do next is, this whole section was about the player move. Let's do the same type of stuff, but for the computer move. So what we can do is we can't immediately pick the computer move. What we can do is we could say, let random number equal. Now we want to use the generate random function. And we can generate a number from 1 to 3. And what we can say is if the number is 1, then we want the computer move to be rock. So what I'm going to do here is, because these if statements are going to change the computer number, we're going to declare the computer number here, but we're not going to, or not the computer number, the computer move here, but we're not going to assign a value to it yet. The reason why we're declaring it here is sometimes we run into a problem where if we declare it inside of a code block, the computer move will only exist inside of that code block. And then once the code block ends, we reach the ending parenthesis, the computer move will be forgotten by the computer. So by declaring it out here, we'll be making sure to have access to it later on. And what we're going to do is we're going to say if the random number was 1 with 2 equal signs, right? Because we have to say if we're checking if they're equal. Then we'll say take this computer move and make it equal to rock, lowercase. And you'll notice that we're using the single equal here because we're assigning a value to this variable that we created out here. Otherwise, if the random number is 2, then the computer move that we created out here should be equal to paper. And then lastly here we'll say if the computer move is anything else, or sorry, if the random number is anything else, then make the computer move equal to scissors. So we declared the variable out here, which means that we'll have access to this variable outside of these code blocks, and we assigned a value to it based on the random number that was generated here. So now the computer move exists. So what we want to do is we want to maybe go back to this picture here and make it so that when the computer picks its move, it generates the right move here. So what we can do is, or generates the right picture there. So what we can do is we can copy and paste this section where we assigned the player pictures, and we can make a clever use of that multi-selector. So after we assign the computer move, I'm going to do a big copy and paste. And then this part here is going to be assign the image based on the computer move. All right, so the only change that's going to happen is all of these instances of the word player, we're going to change them to computer because the computer move image is computer move image. And the computer move is computer move instead of player move. So by highlighting the player part of this and then doing Command D, it will go through here and highlight all the instances of the word player. And now if we type computer, it will replace all of those with computer. On your Chromebooks, remember it's Control D. Sorry, I should have said that. All right, so what we should have happening now is we should have both images being set. So let's check our code for errors. Uncaught error, generate random is not defined. All right, I actually misspelled the name of my function using camel case. The function name is generate_random. So let me go back here in line 36 and do generate_random. Let's see if that works now. All right, cool, so we've got rock versus paper. If I click paper, let's just make sure the computer can be anything. I'm gonna keep going until the computer can be rock. Hopefully the computer will eventually, there we go. Computer can be rock as well. So because it's random, we can get any possibility for any of the buttons. And this is pretty neat. I'm liking the way it's coming out. All that remains is figuring out the results and the score. So after the computer move is set here, and we set the image, let's determine the results. So to determine the results, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do another group of if and else if statements. So this time, because I have the toolbox open, I will copy and paste this if and else if statements because it makes it a little bit easier. I don't like the way it copies and pastes on Replit. Sorry about that. So what you can do is you can highlight this group here, and you can press tab, and it will indent the whole group over. And you'll see that now it lines up all of these code blocks with each other, so that's easy to read. So the first condition that we're going to test is the tie condition. So let me think about all the cases, or I'll just do it one case at a time. If the player move is rock, and this is what we learned in that compound conditional statements lesson, that we can combine two ideas. So if this is true, and then the computer move is also rock, then what we want to do is it will be a tie. So we'll say results.innerHTML is equal to tie. And the scores shouldn't change. So this looks good. There's a couple more conditions that will lead to ties. So yeah, let me do one more of those here. So I'll copy and paste this as the condition. And then we're going to change the word rock to if they're both paper. Sorry, paper is the next one. And then we'll say if they both picked paper, then the results.innerHTML should say tie and nothing should happen to the score. I'm going to copy and paste my else if. I think I'll have a total of, there's 3 choices for the player move, 3 choices for the computer move. I think we'll have a total of 9 possible ones of these. So if the player move is scissors and the computer move is scissors, then we'll say that the result is tie. Let's do another one. And now we have to go into the different cases and make sure that we get them all. So we got all the ties. I'm going to go back to rock. So we did rock, rock. Let's do rock and then computer move paper. So if we picked rock and the computer move picks paper, we'll say computer wins. And now we need to update our score. So updating the score makes me think, okay, we're going to have to create variables here because these numbers are going to change. So let's go all the way back up to the top. And then below where we created these paragraphs at the bottom, let's create score values, score variables. Let player score equal 0, the starting value for the player score. Let computer score equal 0, the starting value for the computer score. So now if the computer wins, we want to increase the computer score by 1. So to increase the computer score by 1, we can say computer score, computer, not commuter score, computer score is equal to the old value of computer score plus 1. So that no matter what the computer score was before, we add 1 to it, and then we reassign that to the computer score. All right, let's see. So that looks good. I'm going to update the scores at the very end after all of this so that we don't have to keep copying and pasting that line of code. So now I'm going to get another else if here. This one is going to be if the player move is rock and the computer move, the last one left is we did rock, paper, rock, scissors we need. Okay, cool. So if the computer move is scissors, then we'll say player wins because rock beats scissors. And we'll say instead of computer score, highlighting the computer part and then using Command D or Control D gives us the option to replace both at the same time. We'll say player score equals player score plus 1. I'm going to delete my else statement at the bottom of this. You'll notice that I've only done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a handful of other ones that we need to get working. I'm going to leave those for you to figure out. So you'll have a couple of more else if statements here. So I'm just going to leave some spaces there. And then the last thing that we're going to do is after you figure those out, we need to update the score here. So we'll say score, which refers to this section here, dot inner HTML is equal to the word score, dot dot space. The number that should go here is the player score. So we'll add in the player score there. Then we'll add in a space, dash space. And then we'll add in the computer score at the very end. And I think what it should do now is it should do score, plug in the new player score, put a dash, and then plug in the computer score. So let's see if this code works for the cases that I was practicing on. So rock, scissors does not work. Results is not defined. All right, so I need to go back and check. I don't think I called this results. I think I called this result. All right, I called it result. So let's go back here and We can do that same trick with the multi-selector, and we'll highlight every place that we see the word results by doing Control D over and over. And we can type in result. And now it will say results instead. All right, let's see if that fixes it. So rock versus paper, the computer wins. Okay, the computer won again, it didn't change. Rock versus scissors, the player wins, and you'll notice my score upgrades. Rock versus paper, the computer wins. The one I'm looking for is the tie here. Okay, when rock versus scissors, I win. And the score seems to be working well. Yeah, with tie, the scores don't update, which is wonderful. You'll notice that the other buttons don't completely work. Nothing happens. So you need to add in the functionality for the other buttons when the player or the computer wins. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. Let's just review the scope of it one more time. We used generating a random number in order to generate a random move by the computer. Instead of programming the buttons one at a time, we selected all of the buttons as a group. And then we added the same functionality, the same event listener for each of the buttons. That functionality allowed us to say that the player move would equal the ID of whatever button we pressed. And then based on what player move we chose, we updated the image here. To choose the computer move, we used our generate random function to get a random number. We created the computer move variable. And then based on the random number that was created, we said, go back and give us a value of either rock, paper, or scissors. Then we assigned the picture for the computer move based on the computer move. And finally, we said that the results were dependent not just on one thing, but on the player move and the computer move. So we made use of that end statement from our compound conditional statements lesson. Finally, we gave some result to the user, depending on what combination of moves was selected. And we also updated the scores and displayed the scores based on what was chosen. So I hope you guys found this video helpful, and it introduced a couple of new concepts that were really a preview for the next unit, but it allowed us to use compound conditional statements, which is the thing we just learned in this unit. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Bye.